Welcome back to Half the Battle. I'm your host, as always, Daniel Levy, and I want to wish you all a very, very happy new year. Today, we're going to talk about the first event of 2025, UFC Vegas 101. Amanda Ribas versus Mackenzie Dern and my friends. It's going down this Saturday night live at the Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada. We got a rematch over half a decade in the making to kick the year off. And I just want to give you all a really quick disclaimer. So I just want to keep it a buck with y'all like I always do. This card is one of the hardest cards to predict that I think I've had in, I mean, definitely recent memory, but possibly in years, because it's like you got all these fights with like these wide lines, and you might understand why the favorite's favored, but you might think, I don't know, the odds might be a bit off. This underdog has a chance, but then it's like, do you really want to trust this underdog? So there's a lot of that. This is going to be a shorter breakdown than usual. Don't worry. Next week at UFC 311, I got you on the normal hour plus. But for this one, we're going to keep it short and sweet, keep things pushing, and let's get down to business. Main event of the evening in the women's strawweight division. We got Mackenzie Dern, who's 14-5, taking on Amanda Ribas, who's 13-5. And currently, they got it. Amanda Ribas, minus 190. The comeback on Mackenzie Dern is plus 165. So these two ran it back when the world was a great place in 2019, pre-COVID, in easier times. You know, I mean, I just remember that fight. That was like one of the best days of my life. Not because anything that happened in the fight, but it was, you know, late 2019. We didn't know what we were about to get ourselves into. But anyways, they ran it once, and it wasn't even close. I mean, Amanda Ribas put on a 3-round clinic against Mackenzie Dern. But why have things changed? Well, firstly, back then, Mackenzie Dern was just coming off a pregnancy. She had just had a kid. We know with the ladies, their first fight back after the kid, usually not the best look for them. And since then, both these ladies have gone 7-4 and 5-4 respectively. 7-4 for Dern, Ribas 5-4 since the first time they ran it. And my biggest takeaway is almost my same takeaway now, which is that Ribas is much more technically sound than Dern. However, Ribas has one flaw and, you know, one defect. It's like that scene in Moneyball when he's talking to Brad Pitt, Jonah Hill is, and he's like, I love everything about Amanda Ribas, but her defect is she's chinny, and you don't often see that in women's MMA. That's actually a very rare occurrence to see a woman be chinny, and it's not just a one-time thing, because, you know, Marina Rodriguez knocked her out back in the day. No, Polyana Viana knocked her out in the first round. Marina Rodriguez knocked her out. Macy Barber knocked her out. Virna Jandiroba rocked her badly. So that's what you got to be concerned about if you're taking Ribas here, is the fact that she can be winning this whole fight and just be susceptible to one shot. And Mackenzie Dern, she does crack. Like, look, the technique on the feet might not be the prettiest. It's come a long way, that's for sure. But she can crack. She hits hard, and she swings big into everything she throws. So I think Ribas is going to be dominating this fight. It's just about, 5 rounds now. At some point, she could get cracked, and not the hardest hitters have put her down. Polyana Viana, for example. Like I said, Virna Jandiroba rocked her badly. So, yeah, that's enough for me to pass altogether on the favorite. And then as far as the dog, I mean, listen, a lot of people thought that the first fight was a dog or pass situation. Ribas goes out there as a big dog and wins. Now, some people think this might be a dog or pass situation. For me, I'm just not confident enough in this fight. So I'm going to pass altogether. I do think from a betting perspective it's dog or pass, but for me, I'm going to go with Ribas as a pure pick. I just think she's more technically sound than Mackenzie Dern in probably every department. I mean, obviously the jiu-jitsu, you don't want Mackenzie Dern on top of you in a jiu-jitsu sense. And there's a chance that Ribas can play on her back, and you don't want stuff like that. But Ribas comes in here with the right game plan. Stuff the takedowns, keep it standing, but play it safe while standing. Don't get cracked with nothing too hard. I think Ribas can come out here and win this 5-round decision. So, and usually, like I talked about, with Ribas, usually you have to finish her to beat her. And actually, her last fight, she did go out there and lose a decision to Rose Namajunas. But honestly, after that fight, my biggest takeaway was that I was more impressed with Ribas than I was with Rose. Now, I'm not saying that Ribas could have arguably won that fight. I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm just saying is that I thought she looked impressive in that main event. She looked like she belonged for sure. And with Dern, she got embarrassed by Andrade, but I thought she looked a lot better against Lemos, and then that recent fight against Lupi was a step in the right direction. She's obviously been focusing on her hands a lot, working with Jason Perillo. You just want to know that she's also been working on her world-class jiu-jitsu. Don't forget what brought you to the dance. But yeah, I could see this fight go either way. I'm going to take Ribas to win this one. Co-main event of the evening in the welterweight division, we got the Argentine dagger, Santiago Ponzinibbio. He's 29-8, taking on Carlston Harris, who's 19-6. And currently, they got it. Santiago Ponzinibbio minus 125. The comeback on Carlston Harris is plus 105. This is an amazing fight. I feel like a lot of the newer fans don't truly appreciate Santiago Ponzinibbio. And I get it. You're a newer fan, so you don't really understand. And you weren't around when Santiago Ponzinibbio was one win away from a title shot. In fact, he actually got his title shot, but after that Neil Magny fight. But what happened was he ended up having this insane health scare that he was just never the same ever again. It's so unfortunate because this guy knows what it means to have the big 7 or 8 fight win streak in the UFC. He's beat guys like Sean Strickland. He beat everyone he had to beat to get that #1 contender fight. And, he was booked to fight Usman, but unfortunately that fell through. And then after that Magny fight, like I said, Pons had the big time health scare where he almost died. And, he's just not the same guy. Now he's 38 years old. But luckily for him, on the other side with Carlston Harris, a very good fighter, but 37 years old. A lot of people try to act like this is a washed up vet versus an upcoming prospect, and that is ultimate fake news. This is 2 washed up vets going at it. It's just that Ponzinibbio is a lot higher profile of a name because he's been around the UFC. How long now? Long ass time. I mean, he was on that first Ultimate Fighter Brazil season. I know he's from Argentina, but it was cool. It was like he was supposed to fight in the finals, but I think he got hurt, and then Leo Santos took his place. But this dude, Santiago, man, in his prime, I mean, damn, his calf kicks were nasty. He's got a disgusting jab, and he uses it all to set up that step-through straight right hand, which has floored so many people along the way. And in his prime, his takedown defense was really, really good. His get-up game was on point. The only issue with Ponzinibbio, he's a bit on the chinny side. That's always been the case. That's nothing new. He got knocked out in the past. He's been knocked out recently. He's a bit on the chinnier side. Now he's kind of slowing down a bit. But on the opposite side with Carlston Harris, he's also on the chinny side. He's also been knocked out his fair share of times. But Carlston Harris has some interesting physical attributes. He's got these long, lanky arms, and he can hit you from spots where you think you're safe, and all of a sudden that long-ass reach will get you with something. And he's got these unorthodox punches, but where it's really at with Carlston Harris is his front choke game. He's got nasty darces, nasty anacondas, a great guillotine, and he's someone to be reckoned with. The thing about it is Ponzinibbio rarely shoots. Ponzinibbio is going to look to keep the standing. So either guy could get caught in that situation, but I think that who's going to have more success in terms of winning minutes and stuff like that, I do think it's going to be Ponzinibbio. It's tough to be confident. Again, we're dealing with a washed-up fighter versus a lesser-known washed-up fighter, so you don't really want to plant your flag. But if we're just talking about prime for prime or historically who's always been better, Pons was 1 fight away from a title shot. I don't think Harris ever even made it to the top 15, but Harris is a stud. And if you're not quite on point when you fight a guy like Carlston Harris, I mean, ask Jeremiah Wells what happened in that 3rd round. Ask Impa what happened in that 1st round. Like I'm saying, Carlston Harris is a very, very dangerous guy, but Ponzinibbio, I think even in his washed form, is experienced enough to deal with someone on this caliber. And I mean, point in case is that Pons' last fight against Muslim Salikov was a pretty competitive fight. I definitely thought Muslim won it, but like Pons still has a lot of fight in him. It's just unfortunate how much he's slowed down physically, since the health concern. But again, Harris isn't exactly a spring chicken either. And I think historically Pons has always been better. So for that reason, I'm going to go Santiago Ponzinibbio to actually come out here, win this fight, lay those gloves down in the center of the octagon, and retire a winner. And it's unfortunate he never got his title shot. I always wanted to see him and Usman, or even him and Woodley back in the day. I even wanted to see Santiago Ponzinibbio versus Robbie Lawler. Like, those were all like dream matchups that never happened. But thank God for him. He's got the job doing, the desk for, I think, the Latino American network. So yeah, keep doing you, bro. And Carlston Harris, I'm a fan as well. He just got his black belt in jiu-jitsu, so you got to congratulate the guy. But yeah, this fight could go either way, but I'm going to lean a little bit towards Pons. I just think historically he's better. Featured bout in the middleweight division, we got Abdul Razak Alhassan. He's 12-6, taking on Cesar Almeida, who's 6-1. Well, he's only 6-1 in MMA, but he had an extensive kickboxing history, as you guys know. He fought Poatan 3 times, even won one of them. Now, granted, this was way over 10 years ago, but yeah, I mean, he's a stud at kickboxing. And Razak, man, he is such a devastating first-round knockout artist. It says his record's 12-6. Between you and me, his record's 13-6 because he 100% beat Cody Brundage. Like, that fight was over before the back of the head shots. And, my boy Liam talked about it on Twitter the other day, and I commented, the big question here is, where would Razak Alhassan rank in terms of fastest knockouts in middleweight history because he definitely knocked out Brundage in that first round. I don't care what anyone says. I watched a fight between two grown men. One guy knocked the other guy out. They said it was a no contest. Again, he finished that fight before the back of the head shots, and no one can tell me differently. But on the other side with Cesar Almeida, he's not going to just come out desperate like Cody Brundage did. You know, he's a guy that likes to take his time. And if you want to have like a technical kickboxing match with Cesar Almeida, you know, kind of like Razak did against Munir Lazzez, then Razak's going to get picked apart. But what Razak needs to do is what Razak is known for. I mentioned how he's got 13 wins. 12 of those wins are by first round knockout. You know what I'm saying? And then he had the Claudio Ribeiro fight, which was a second round knockout. But I count the Cody Brundage fight 100% as a win for Razak Alhassan. You know how we operate on half the battle? We operate on reality in terms of what we saw with our eyes, not what some old athletic commission boxing judge thought. You know, they don't know shit about fighting. That being said, the early going, Razak absolutely has a chance to finish this fight. You know, Cesar is used to the big gloves. What size gloves do they wear in Glory? Is like 12 ounce. I think 16 ounce is a bit too big, but I think probably 12 ounce. Well, now you're in 4 ounce gloves, man. So the early going, Razak definitely has a chance to sleep this guy. And I also think that, you know, Razak, his nickname is Judo Thunder. He does have a judo background. I would not be surprised if he mixed in takedowns in this spot. What I'm worried about is what everyone should be worried about in any Razak fight, is that the longer the fight goes, even though I don't think his cardio is as bad as people like to say. I mean, look at that third round against Buckley. He looked completely fine there. And, you know, most recently against, not Cesar, against Claudio Ribeiro, well, Navia second round knockout. So I don't think he's just first round or bust. But historically speaking, when fights do get extended, they tend not to go Razak's way. So it's tough. And then also you got to factor in my boy Razak's pretty damn close to 40. Now, again, just like the co-main event, Cesar ain't exactly a spring chicken either. He's 36, 37. So yeah, I'm going to lean a little bit towards Cesar, but from a betting perspective, again, I think this is a dog or pass situation. Now, next up in the featherweight division, we got a matchup between the UFC debutant, Austin Bashi. He's 13-0, taking on C-Rod, Christian Rodriguez, who's 11-2. Currently, they got it. Austin Bashi minus 270. The comeback on Christian Rodriguez is plus 230. So there's another dog or pass situation just because of the odds. Again, all this stuff comes down to the odds. A pure pick is completely different than, not always, but can be completely different than what you would do for a bet. And yeah, I'm going to just tell you, I'm picking Austin Bashi here, but minus 270 is trash. It was like minus 200 a week ago. I think it was even minus 190 2 weeks ago. Like, if you got in on that, you did your job. You know, you can even take the other side and guarantee yourself a profit. But at minus 270, I don't have any desire to bet this fight. My thing with Christian Rodriguez, I think Christian Rodriguez is very good, and I think he's good everywhere. He's just technical, well-rounded, solid. Like, there's not really too many holes in his game. My issue with Christian Rodriguez is I think he's in the wrong weight class. I think that my boy needs to put down the tacos, get down to 135 pounds, and that's where he could potentially make a title run and get ranked. At featherweight, he's going to do fine in a sense because he is very, very good skills-wise, but he's going to have issues really making that ascension towards the top of the division because he's too small. He's simply too small. Like, he beat all these undefeated prospects, Cameron Simon, Isaac Dulgarian, Raul Rosas Jr., but he couldn't make 135 pounds. So they're like, all right, we're going to get you up to 45s, but we're going to give you Julian Erosa. Now, Julian Erosa, he is tall for the weight class at featherweight. You know, he's 6'1", but Julian Erosa has been knocked out damn near 10 times. And it was like, well, Christian, you're on this win streak. You've defeated all these undefeated studs. Hey, here's Julian Erosa. Go knock him out. Let's get you in a top 15 showdown. And he choked so badly, literally and figuratively, in that fight. And that was a big setback because you'd expect Christian Rodriguez to do a lot better in that spot, especially how he got finished with that guillotine choke, which granted, Julian's got a great one. Julian's got great front chokes, but you saw other people not have submission success against C-Rod, you know, like Raul Rosas, for example. So shout out to Erosa, I guess, for that guillotine, but my big takeaway is this guy's in the wrong weight class. And with Bashi, I know he's making his UFC debut. I know the level of competition might be a little questionable, but this dude coming from the Michigan scene can grapple his ass off. And I'm telling you right now, if you think that, well, I've already seen Christian against grapplers. I saw him against Raul Rosas. I saw him against Dulgarian. These guys gassed after the first round. Well, one big difference here is that Austin Bashi, he can go all day. He can grapple his ass off for 3 straight rounds. I think he can grapple for 5 straight rounds. So I'm not worried about that. And actually, if you go on Twitter right now, you type in best fight picks and you type in Bashi and you click on latest, you'll see that I tweeted, it was either right before his pro debut or right after his pro debut. I was like, look out for this kid Bashi. So basically, this kid left an impression on me from his professional debut. I knew right away, yeah, this is a stud. 12 fights later, now he's 13-0. And Now he's making his UFC debut against C-Rod. So I think that this is going to go similar to the first round of the Bulgarian fight, similar to the first round of the Raul Rosas fight. The only difference is that I don't think Austin Bashi is going to have that big adrenaline dump, that big just gassing moment where, you know, the tide just significantly turns and now he's shooting from a mile out. I think Austin Bashi is going to have a lot of grappling success, and I think he's going to win a decision here. Now, next up in the middleweight division, we got a matchup between Chris Curtis. He's 31-11, taking on Roman Kopylov, who's 13-3. And currently, they got it. Roman Kopylov minus 250. The comeback on Chris Curtis is plus 210. This is a great fight because Chris Curtis, if you've watched one Chris Curtis fight, you've watched every Chris Curtis fight. You know exactly what this guy brings to the table. He's a very dangerous southpaw pocket boxer with elite takedown defense. Now, the takedown defense used to not be elite back when he was in PFL and whatnot, but whatever he's been doing to level it up, it's looked incredible since he's gotten to the UFC. He's just impossible to take down, man. You want to stand and bang in the pocket with a guy like Chris Curtis? Chances are you might hit the deck. You want to gas out against a guy like Chris Curtis? Chances are you might hit the deck. So Roman Kopylov, he knows exactly what he needs to look out for. What I mentioned, the southpaw pocket boxer with elite takedown defense. Now, the blueprint on how to beat Chris Curtis has been established for years. You just have to out-volume him, pick him apart, stay on the outside, run away, and just more volume than him. That's it. But when you start standing in the pocket and he starts getting off on those body shots, those big hooks, that's when you need to be very careful. But I truly do believe that Roman Kopylov is equipped with the goods to come out here and keep him at distance, pick him apart with that jab, mix in body kicks, run away, make him frustrated. Issue, and the concern is when this fight hits late round 2, late round 3, Kopylov's kind of a gasser. That's what I'm worried about. And if you've watched Kopylov's career, it's amazing what he's turned into, because when he first came into the UFC, I don't know if people remember, but people kind of viewed Kopylov like he was a joke. People used to call him a fake Russian. I don't know if you all remember that. I remember that. But since that point, he got on a big win streak. He got some high profile wins. So it's like, okay, this guy's turned things around, and I think he can win this fight, but it's very contingent on do not fight this guy in the pocket. Do not get into a stand and bang. You go, I go with Chris Curtis. That is just stupid. You have to pick this man apart. Don't worry about if the crowd is booing that you're running away, and nonstop volume. Jabs, straight punches, kicks to the body. Not necessarily go for takedowns, but just feint that level change to give him that look. And I think that Roman Kopylov can come out here, win this decision. But then again, Curtis is getting up there, man. He's 37. He's talking about he's getting close to retirement. So maybe he can get knocked out too. But he seems so damn historically durable to me. I mean, I know he's been knocked out in the past, but that time he got knocked out was like his second fight in a single day. You know, that was back when PFL tournaments, like they had multiple fights in one day. So I don't even think that really counts. I mean, don't get me wrong. He was slept, but I'm just saying, like, I think he retired like prior to that, and then like 5 minutes later, they're like, hey, you got to go out there and fight again. Yeah, I'm not going to hold that against Chris Curtis at all. But Chris Curtis, he's a finished product. This much we know. So, yeah, I think Roman Kopylov is going to come out here and pick him apart, but it could get sketchy late second round, late third round. So, you know, and you're talking about minus 250. You got to be concerned, but I'm going to still pick Roman Kopylov to win this fight. Now, next up in the welterweight division, we got a matchup between Punahele Soriano. He's 10-4, taking on Uros Medic, who's 10-2. And currently, they got it Uros Medic minus 210. The comeback on Punahele Soriano is plus 180. This is another tough one for me because it's like you got a former 85er in Punahele Soriano taking on a former 55er in Uros Medic. But when you're talking about just pure striking technique, 100% goes to Uros Medic. He's a lot more technically sound, a lot more diverse, more weapons at his disposal. But Punahele Soriano has got big power in that left hand. The issue with Punahele is the in-betweens are kind of shaky. There's not, you know, when he's not swinging big left hands, you know, there's not many jabs. There's not many kicks. There's a lot of empty space, and that's what I'm worried about. Now, Punahele does have a wrestling background, and it would actually behoove him to use that here. You know, you're going against a smaller guy, faster, and like I said, he's slicker on the feet, but Puna can mix in this wrestling. 2 of those 3 rounds, you can possibly grind this guy out. The issue I have is that Puna was susceptible to gassing out at 185 pounds. Now, the question is, dropping to 70s, he's going to have to put in a lot of cardio work. So is he still a gasser or not? And even though he went 3 rounds with Miguel Baeza that last fight, I don't think that really gave us an accurate look of how good or not Puna really is, because I think that Miguel Baeza, you know how we talked about Santiago Ponzinibbio never being the same after his health scare? Baeza was never the same after his war with Santiago Ponzinibbio. Some guys just have some kind of identity tied up to that undefeated record. Now, I don't know if that's true or not related to Miguel Baeza, but what I do know is that he was never the same after that life and death war with Santiago Ponzinibbio, with Genchi Boa. So we don't really know what to take away from the Puna fight. Like, that was an abysmal performance on Baeza's part that you don't want to, overhype how Puna really looked there. So this fight here against Medic is going to really let me know, like, is this guy, is he a brand new man at 70s, or was it circumstantial against Baeza? So yeah, this is a tough one for me to call because I just don't know. I'm going to go with Medic here because I do think that if this fight's staying standing, yes, Puna has a chance to land one big shot, but just in terms of the volume, the output, and the action, it's going to be going to Medic. He's going to be popping his jab. He's going to be landing straight punches. He's going to be landing kicks. He's going to be moving around. He's very fluid on the feet. So I think that the minutes are going to be won by Medic here. It's just about, can Puna get that wrestling going? And what does Puna truly look like at 70s? Because like I said, I do not believe that Baeza fight was an accurate representation of anything except Baeza being done. I'm going to go Medic here, but I'm not interested in this fight from a betting perspective. Now, next up in the flyweight division, we got a matchup between Jose Johnson. He's 16-9, taking on Felipe Bunes, who's 13-7. Currently, they got it. Jose Johnson, -185. The comeback on Felipe Bunes is +160. Another really tough fight to call. These guys, especially Jose Johnson, he's tall for that weight class. I mean, you don't often see a 6'1" flyweight man, but he makes the weight fine. The issue I've had with Johnson is the same issue a lot of people have had, is that, his takedown defense isn't exactly the best. His get-up game isn't exactly the best either. But man, you fight a long-range kickboxing game with a guy like Jose Johnson, and you're all but screwed, right? And with Felipe Bunes, I think that he's a lot better than what he showed in that UFC debut against Josh Van. And I think that Josh Van has proven by now that, hey, this is a guy who's on a rise towards the top 10. He's one of the best young prospects in the entire sport. So getting kind of worn down by a guy like that, then succumbing to the body shots, I don't think it's the biggest deal in the world. But here, I do think that Felipe Bunes can have a lot of takedown success against Jose Johnson. Why did I hear some breakdowns calling this guy Jose Johnson? He's not Brazilian. Listen, man. Jose Aldo. It used to be Jose Aldo back in the WC. One day he just started calling himself Jose Aldo, and then from there on out, every single guy named Jose, people would call Jose. Guys, there's only one Jose Aldo. The other dudes are named Jose. This guy's name is Jose Johnson. Anyways, I think that Jose keeps this at distance. He's got a great chance to pick apart Felipe Bunes, but I think this is a spot where Bunes can come in here, surprise a lot of people, get some takedowns, get some top control, possibly get a submission along the way. Yeah, I'm going to go Felipe Bunes for the upset here. Now, next up in the middleweight division, we got a matchup between Marco Tulio. He's 12-1, taking on Ihor Potieria, who's 21-7. Currently, they got it Marco Tulio -500. The comeback on Ihor Potieria is +375. So Marco Tulio is a god amongst men. I mean, this is a dude that when you talk about confidence being such a big factor in MMA, you have to talk about Marco Tulio. I mean, this guy just got his Contender Series contract off his second win on Contender Series. And just knowing that, like, you came up the hard way, you had to come through Contender Series twice, you finally got that contract. Now this dude's dating Norma Dumont. Mackenzie Dern is recently single. She's in the main event. Like, dude, you can come out here and get a performance bonus, go home with Norma Dumont. Mackenzie, like I said, recently single in that main event. You got room on both shoulders, my boy. I'm just saying, man, like, this guy could leave UFC Vegas 101 a fan favorite and a literal god amongst men. Now, as far as his fighting style is concerned, this is a guy that trains out of shoot the box, so he's going to get chaotic at times on the feet, but what he's really known for is his ground game. Marco Tulio is nasty on the mat, and it's funny because his Contender Series fight, he won via spinning back kick knockout, but like, if you actually watch the film on Tulio, what he's really known for is his jiu-jitsu, and I think that if he gets Ihor Potieria down, the fight could be over shortly after. Now, with Ihor Potieria, I think that this is a guy who's a lot better than people think, and he's a lot better than he's shown inside the octagon so far. What do I mean by that? Well, this guy comes into the UFC with an extremely padded record. He was like a +300 underdog on Contender Series, wasn't even supposed to win that fight, wins that fight, and then all of a sudden you're fighting these battle-tested dudes in the UFC. Like, he's in there fighting Carlos Ulberg and all these guys. It's like, dude, like, you have no business fighting these guys. But from time to time, you'll see little glimpses from Ihor that he is improving, man. I mean, look at that Rodolfo Bellato fight. Like, I know officially that's a TKO loss for him, but man, he looked the best he had ever looked at that time in that fight, right up until the finish. And then the very next fight against that Robert Brichek guy, that was the best performance of Ihor Potieria's career. It's just unfortunate he could never build momentum off of that. You know, he then then they match him up with Michel Pereira, who, Michel Pereira is like a top 20 guy, a top 15 guy. Like, you're just not ready for that level yet, Ihor, and then they give him Cesar Almeida. And man, he just did not look good in that fight. It's tough because if you just look at the stats between these two, the stats say that this is not a minus 500 situation. The stats say that if this is standing, Ihor Potieria has a chance. Not just the stats, but the physical attributes. Ihor Potieria is taller than this man. He's got a reach advantage, et cetera, et cetera. But then what was the first thing we talked about during this breakdown? Confidence. Confidence is such a drug in this sport. Like, when dudes lose their confidence, they just come back not looking the same. Remember when Tony Ferguson lost his confidence? He never won a fight ever again. Goes from the longest win streak in lightweight to the longest losing streak in lightweight. Like, it's crazy. So when we're talking about confidence, one guy is topping Norma Dumont, just got his UFC contract, is this stud from Shoot to Box. The other guy is 1-4 in his last 5. He loses this fight, he's out the UFC for sure. And it seems like he's at the point now where it's like, hey man, we're not even going to give you full notice. Like, if you want to stay in the UFC, you better take this fight on 2 weeks short notice. If not, fuck off to Ukraine, like, straight up. Like, that's what it seems like to me. So while I do think that Ihor is a lot better than people think and better than he's shown, it's going to be tough to match the confidence of Tulio right now, especially if he can get this to the mat. I'm going to go Marco Tulio here to win this fight. Now, next up in the lightweight division, we got a matchup between Thiago Moises. He's 18-8, taking on Trey Ogden, who's 18-6. Currently, they got it. Thiago Moises, minus 185. The comeback on Trey Ogden is plus 160. So this might be the toughest fight on the entire card for me to call, because it's like, Thiago Moises is such a talented young stud, but like, again, we're talking about confidence. Confidence is such a big factor when it comes to fighting, and I just don't see that assertiveness from Thiago. I don't see that aggression from Thiago, and that's not just from the eye test. If you look at the stats back me up too. This guy's volume is on the insanely low side. Like, if you're not quite ready to, for a top 30 guy, Thiago Moises is going to expose that and then some. He's got very hard kicks. Like, technically sound, like, everywhere, man. Like, punches in the pocket, jiu-jitsu's on point, like, everything's on point. It's more so the approach from Thiago Moises that I have the biggest issue with. Like, there's not that just putting a stamp on things. There's not that assertiveness, like I said. There's not that I'm going to win by any means necessary. Like, I just don't see that with Thiago. And then with Ogden on the other side, he also kind of gets a little weird when he gets pressured. But the thing about it is, when you watch, like, Ogden get pressured by people like in his last fight against Loic Radzhabov, or even some of these other fights, Thiago just doesn't have enough volume for that. Thiago just doesn't let it go like that. And one quality that Ogden has is he's very good at weaseling decisions. Like, you go back and you watch that Daniel Zellhuber fight. Just like I told you all back then, when you walked out of that fight, did you walk out thinking that was about what Ogden did right or about what Zellhuber did wrong? It was about what Zellhuber did wrong. But when you see this guy Ogden and he just keeps winning, even that modified, that was a no contest, that was a domination by Ogden. Like, when you count this guy out, man, I mean, I laid -2 something on Zellhuber and got burnt badly. And so, like, this dude will beat Zellhuber, but he'll go lose to Jordan Levitt. It's like I'm saying, these guys are unpredictable, bro. Straight up. And same thing with Thiago Moises. Like, he'll have fights where he just can't get up from bottom. Like the Michael Johnson fight, when he was just getting teed off on, and then he pulled a miracle leg lock in that second round. Like, I don't really see that being a thing here. I see these guys kind of just being hesitant a little bit, and it just being this 3-round fight that goes to the decision, and you don't know what side Adelaide Bird had. You don't know what Chris Lee is thinking. You don't know what that Junichiro Kamijo guy thinks. It's like, yeah. And in situations like that, I usually take the dog. So I'm not confident about how this fight plays out. And I do see people saying, oh, Moises is going to pressure him. When does Moises pressure anyone? His numbers are way too low, man. That's not the pressure you need to break a guy like Ogden. And then with Ogden, he can match or surpass the Thiago Moises volume. So yeah, they're both technically sound, and it could go either way with these judges, but I just don't see why it's like -200-ish for Moises. Like, I think that he is not a trustworthy guy at -200. I just don't think so. The eye test proves that, and the looking at the numbers test proves that. So yeah, I don't know how this fight's gonna play out, but I'm gonna go with Trey Ogden for the upset. King Weasel abilities. Now, next up in the welterweight division, we got a matchup between Preston Parsons. He's 11-5, taking on Jacobe Smith, who's 9-0. Currently, they got it. Jacobe Smith -525. The comeback on Preston Parsons +400. So Jacobe Smith was one of my favorite prospects on the last season of Dana White Contender Series. Even one of my top 5 prospects on that season. This guy is nasty, man. If you watch his regional scene fights, like, he had some devastating knockouts. Like, he would touch these dudes, they would go flying. But then you look into things a little bit more and you see his wrestling credentials. I mean, this guy right? He's a former D1 wrestler from Oklahoma State. Like, you already know kind of wrestlers they've produced there. Johnny Hendricks, who went on to be a UFC champion. So, like, wrestling credentials like Oklahoma State under your belt, you're coming into the UFC. And then you also have that one-hitter quitter. You're a freak athlete. I like everything about this guy. I just don't like that it's minus 525. Where's my value at? And then on the other side with Preston Parsons, I've known about him a while. You know, I remember seeing his fight with Mike Perry on the regionals. And my takeaway from Parsons is, you know, he's a solid wrestler with, you know, some hands and whatnot. But, like, when I talk about solid wrestling, you know, I say solid wrestling for Parsons, but then Jacobe, I'm saying elite, world-class wrestling, right? I talk about Parsons stand-up. Yeah, it's just okay. It's nothing special. And Jacobe Smith, technically wise, you know, might not be too far off from Parsons, but, like, power-wise, it's night and day, right? And then you got to talk about the confidence. This kid coming in 9-0, making his UFC debut versus Parsons, who, you know, loses to guys like Trevin Giles. Like, they literally test every single prospect against Trevin Giles, and Parsons couldn't pass the Trevin Giles test. And then I also think is a bit on the chinny side too. So the wrestling may cancel itself out, even though Jacobe has way better wrestling credentials than this guy. I'm just saying MMA wrestling a little bit different. Maybe the wrestling cancels itself out. I think Jacobe can crack this guy and put him down. So there's that. But my big concern, not only is it minus 525, this dude took the fight on a fucking week short notice. I don't know if he was training or not. Do you guys know if he was training? I'm sure he was, but I don't know for a fact. So when it's minus 500, there's no value on it. It's a pass for me, but as a pure pick, I'll go Jacobe Smith here. Now, next up in the flyweight division, we got a matchup between Ernesta Kareckaite. She's 5-1-1, taking on Nicolle Caliari, who's 8-2. Currently, they got it. Ernesta Kareckaite minus 260. The comeback on Nicolle Caliari is plus 220. Another fight with super wide odds. Like, I get why Kareckaite is favored here because the length is going to be a real issue to deal with, and then the volume on the feet as well. So this girl, Caliari, she's kind of short, stocky, and if she can get her takedowns going, like we've seen, Kareckaite can be grinded out. But on the flip side of things, if she can't get those takedowns going, this is where I think the size and the length of Kareckaite can be a problem here. Keep her at bay. Long strikes, long kicks, straight punches, etc., and just pick her apart a little bit. But minus 260 already implies that there's literally zero edge on Ernesta at these odds. So once again, a dog or pass situation. It's just about, you know, because when you watch Nicolle's Contender Series fight, she did get 2 takedowns there, including a nice judo throw, you know, ends up getting that win. It was really nice. It's just tough with the size difference here. Yeah, I'm not really sure. I'm going to pick the favorite, actually, to kind of pick her apart a little bit. But, I mean, if you see the favorite on her back here, is that going to surprise you? It's not going to surprise me. So, yeah, this is another one of those. If, like, Caliari was a little bit bigger, I'd probably take the shot here, but she might simply be too small. Watch her win anyways. Get a judo throw to an armbar or something, but yeah. Now, next up in the light heavyweight division, we got a matchup between Magomed Gadzhiesulov. He's 9-0, taking on Bruno Lopez, who's 13-1. Currently, they got it. Magomed Gadzhiesulov minus 210. The comeback on Bruno Lopez is plus 180. I like this fight a lot because you got Bruno Lopez, who's the former LFA champion, taking on this undefeated kid, Gadzhiesulov. He's actually not Russian. I think he's from Bahrain. Yeah, Bahrain. Yeah, Gadzhiesulov, man, he's got some qualities I really like about him. So here's what I don't like. I don't like that he's really one-dimensional, right? He only wants to kind of do that Russian coast. I know he's not Russian, he's Bahrainian, but he fights like a Russian. His name is Magomed. Very strong takedown game. But besides that, what's he got, right? But let me tell you what I do like about him. I like that this guy is super tough. Like, if you watch that fight against Brenjison Ribeiro, the fact that this dude survived that guillotine, then got on top, and then ended the round landing big elbows, like, that is a very, very good sign that you want to see in, like, a prospect. This guy's got insane toughness, man. Like, he could have tapped out, and none of us would have held it against him. That guillotine was locked in, and he didn't, man. Then that third round, he really just takes over, gets that easy takedown, and then just grinds out the rest of the fight. And he had gotten hurt badly in that first round. So if anything, I love the toughness of Gadzhiesulov. And on the other side with Bruno Lopez, like I said, he's the former LFA champion. What he's really known for is actually his jiu-jitsu, but I know he's coming off that knockout win on Contender Series. The issue with him striking is that, you know, he's actually on the chinny side. You know, Brenjison Ribeiro did sleep him on his first Contender Series appearance. But the thing about it is Magomed Gadzhiesulov doesn't really let his hands go that much. So on the feet, I'm not really convinced that Bruno Lopez's chin is going to get exposed. So then it comes down to, can Gadzhiesulov get these takedowns? I don't have a reference point of Bruno Lopez fighting against someone with this kind of Russian style of takedowns. Like I said, I know he's Bahrainian, but the style is that Russian style. I haven't really seen Lopez in there with that style. Let me say this though, over 10 years ago, just a fun fact, Lopez actually knocked out Gregory Hobocop Rodriguez. So he's been fighting real competition for a long time. I'd say his level of competition is better than Gadzhiesoulov's. And like I also said, Lopez is known for his jiu-jitsu, despite winning a lot of fights fights by knockout. I just don't really have the reference, like I said, of how he does with someone who's only going to look to grapple him. But what I've seen from Lopez's jiu-jitsu, it looks pretty legit, man. And he seems like the more well-rounded guy here. Obviously, there's things to be concerned about. Like I said, Gajisulov, he's so tough. And I love how relentless he is. And I love the fact that, like, he's not going to fight uncharacteristic. He's not going to try to swing bombs. He's only going to try to do what he's good at, which is getting the fight to the ground. So I like that quality in a fighter. And again, I don't know what Lopez's takedown defense is like against this level of opponent. But what I've seen from Lopez, he seems like the more well-rounded guy here. He seems like the more experienced guy here. And I think the odds should actually be a little bit closer before the fact. So I'm going to go with Bruno Lopez here for the upset. Now, next up in the strawweight division, we got a matchup between Victoria Dudakova. She's 8-1, taking on Fatima Klein, who's 6-1. Now, here's where things get interesting, my friends. Currently, they got it. Just depends where you look. But, I mean, I see Fatima Klein minus 1,000 to come back on Victoria Dudakova plus 625. Look, I'm not going to argue that Fatima should be favored here. Sure, she should be favored. Seems like the better prospect, but, like, why minus 1,000? Why not minus 200? Why not minus 250? Why not minus 300? Why minus 1,000? Like over 90%? Like that's what we're saying here? Yeah, just like with the current state of judging, this has to be super dominant to cover a minus 1,000 price tag. And I know that Dudakova's coming off that disappointing performance against Sam Hughes, and I know that wasn't her only disappointing performance. I know that people were unhappy with how she looked against Jean Frey, and I know that people have had very high expectations of Dudakova, and maybe she hasn't quite lived up to them. But I mean, it's not like Fatima Klein necessarily looked that great in her debut, but then again, it was up a weight class. And when you compare how she looks here at strawweight on a regional scene, she looked like a completely different woman. So I do expect Fatima to look a lot better here than she did in that debut. That goes without saying, but covering a minus 1,000 price tag, you know, I don't need to sit here and go back and forth. This is a dogger pass situation. Like, sure, I'll pick Fatima to win this fight. But again, Chris Lee judging this fight, Adelaide Bird, what do they see? If it's 1-1 going into that third round, this is a clear dogger pass situation. Like I said, the only way that minus 1,000 is justified here is if this is a pillar to post ass whooping. If there's even a moment of success for Dudakova, she covered her price tag. If she loses a split decision, she covered her price tag. Hell, if she loses the first 2 rounds, dominates the third round, she covered her price tag. So it's like, yeah, I'm definitely not parlay inclined, but do I want to take a half unit shot on this girl Dudakova who, like, she have like staph infection on her ass, which is like, do you like not shower? Like, so that makes me question other things. Like, is this girl like not the brightest? And like, yeah, but at the same time, how often do you get a Russian fighter at plus 6-something hundred odds? Not often. So this is one to ponder. This is a dogger pass situation, but you can't, I can't go big on Dudakova, of course. It would be like a half unit shot, if anything, or just pass altogether. If I had to predict right now what I end up doing, I'd probably end up passing unless I see something Friday on the scales. But yeah, I just, you know, I don't feel comfortable laying minus 1,000 unless I'm guaranteed a mismatch, which before the fact, I haven't concluded I'm guaranteed. Maybe you have, but I haven't, especially with this state of judging. So yeah, it's a pass for me. Let me know in the comments. Make it make sense to me. And last but not least, in the lightweight division, we got a matchup between Joe Solecki. He's 13-5, taking on Nurulo Aliyev, who's 9-0. Currently, they got it. Nurulo Aliyev, minus 600. The comeback on Joe Solecki is plus 425. So Joe Solecki is a guy that's paid his dues on his regional scene and in the UFC. He's got some decent wins in the UFC. You know, he beat Jim Miller. He's got good jiu-jitsu. His hands have never been that great. But my issue with Joe Solecki's jiu-jitsu is that he plays on his back a lot. And he will pull guard in fights, which, like, you do not want to do that against Nurulo Aliyev. Like, you know how we were talking about Gajisulov, how he's from Bahrain, but he fights like a Russian? This kid, Nurulo Aliyev, is from Tajikistan, but he fights like a Russian. And he's got that exact grinding style. And if we're talking about, you know, the one threat that Solecki has is the submissions. I mean, this dude survived all of Rafael Alves' guillotine attempts, and we know that dude's got a nasty guillotine. I mean, ask Mark DeCasey about that. And Solecki taking this on a week notice, there's already concerns about his cardio. There's already concerns about just his well-rounded skill set. Like, as you move up the ranks, you can't be a guard puller anymore, man. And if y'all want to see a brutal knockout, y'all want to see a devastating knockout, let me know if y'all can find this, because I think it's kind of obscure at this point. But if you can find Joe Solecki versus Nicolas Mata, you want to see one of the most brutal knockouts you've ever seen, let me know if you can find it. And if you can't find it, you can find this one. Type in Nicolas Mata versus Cesar Balmaceda on Fight Pass. They had to bring in the stretcher, the smelling salts, the whole ordeal. But Nick Mata also stiffed Joe Solecki just like that, but I haven't found it. I watched it back in the day because they did it in this promotion 864, which is some like Southeast regional, and a bunch of my friends fought in it. So I saw that fight, but I haven't seen it since. I think the footage might just not be anywhere to be found. The footage has disappeared. If y'all can find it, let me know. But listen, man, I think Nurulo Aliyev can come out here, test his stand-up against Joe Solecki if he wants. He can also go to his main strength and mix in those takedowns. It's just, you have to be careful about the jiu-jitsu attack of Solecki, especially early on. But as the fight starts starts to progress, they get a little bit more slippery, then I really don't think the jiu-jitsu is going to be a factor at all. I think it's going to be a non-factor, to be honest with you. So, yeah. A lot of words about a minus 600 favorite. But listen, man, this minus 600, I think it's justified. Whereas the fight before, when we were talking about that minus 1,000, before the fact, I couldn't get there. Maybe after I watch the fight play out, I'll be like, oh, that's why Klein was minus 1,000. But here with Aliev, I'm like, this is why he's minus 600. I get it. Whereas Klein, I don't get why she's minus 1,000. Y'all let me know in the comments. But anyways, I'm going to pick Nurullah Aliev to win that fight. I want to thank y'all so much for taking the time to check out this very special edition of Half the Battle. Very, very happy New Year to you all. Please hit the like button. Please hit the subscribe. Leave me a comment if you feel so inclined. Share everything. I really, really appreciate you guys so much. Y'all know where to follow me on Twitter at Best Fight Picks, on Twitter at Half the Battle HQ, on TikTok at Half the Battle Podcast, on Instagram at Half the Battle Pod, here on YouTube at Half the Battle Official. So subscribe everywhere. And then I'm always down to interact with anyone that has my back. And I'm truly grateful for all the support y'all have shown me. Check out my new late night news show called This Week in MMA. It's always been my dream to host my own late night show, my own talk show. That's kind of what we're doing here. I even got comments saying I sold out, which is insane. I sold out by doing something I want to do. I never sold out at all. I've been myself this whole time. So much love to the real ones. And until the next time, let's cash these bets.